We've got a lot to open up this week. Monday, March 13, just baseball show. Jack McMullen, Aram Leighton. Aram was just at the DR in Venezuela over the weekend, which looks like an environment that surpasses most in baseball history. So I got to get his take on that. We're going to talk about Corbin Carroll's 8-year, $111 million extension. There were two arms that looked really good in spring training yesterday. But before all that, we always give you like 5 minutes of non-baseball conversation. So I'm going to make Aram suck it up again. By the way, Friday's non-baseball conversation was about you not liking food, which whatever floats your boat, man.
That's such bullshit. That's not liking food and not placing an insane emphasis on like every little bite and taste and cost is a little different. That's all I'm going to say. Like, I can survive off of the cheap breakfast sandwich, like 80% of my meals. And like that was basically the point I was making, which is now evolved into I don't like food, which is like makes me sound like a serial killer.
Well, you are. You are kind of a psycho. So,
fair.
Yeah, I mean, like, I understand where you're coming from, but also, like, I understand why really good meals cost more money, and I'm willing to do that because my, level of, like, my serotonin levels climb with
That's
that.
fair. And there's meals I love. I really enjoy it. It's just like there's never a tug for me. I will say though, like it just kind of goes in the same bucket as like the wine snobs, like food snobs just bother me.
I can't tell.
I've never sent the food back in my life. That's like a great barometer. I've never in my life sent the food back. I'd bite the bullet if I had to, if it was like total shit.
Same. I will request a refund from like Chipotle if they screw my order up that bad.
No,
but I've
fair.
never sent the food back. If it's like, this is a little overcooked, I need you to start from scratch. Correct. I never do that. So I'm with you there. We also got another text regarding Culver's and In-N-Out. Man, this argument has legs.
Thank God we're getting this shit over with. Well, speaking of, you're coming down for the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that. That was one of the best experiences I've had on a baseball field. Or just around a baseball field in a long time. We'll unpack more on that later because there's some sentimental like aspects to it too that were really special. I'd love to talk about. But
for sure.
This is a really, really good time because I feel like you got to get through February. I've always joked that I'm going to get married in February because it's the worst sports month there is once the Super Bowl is over. But now It feels like things are picking up. And, as we're recording this, Selection Sunday is just kind of finished up and everybody's getting ready to make their brackets, which is also maybe one of the most fun things on the sports calendar.
So we have a tool for you if you have yet to make your bracket that you may not know about. And the Just Baseball Network is expanding a little bit. We've had Just Basketball kicking for a little bit with Chris Manning and Brendan Clean, who do great work. Brendan is with the Suns, like he's in the Phoenix area. Chris Manning is in the Cleveland area. He covers the Cavs better than pretty much anybody. And they do the Just Basketball show. We also just launched Just College Hoops. And perfect timing because their first couple episodes dropped right before the conference tournaments. And now they're going to get going here with as much March Madness content and as much of a cheat sheet to filling out your bracket as you can find. And I know that you're going to Google like, hey, best bets in the bracket. They're going to do that for you, and they're really entertaining. Tim Leonard, who is like a great friend of ours from Syracuse. I did all the play-by-play stuff with him. He's doing play-by-play stuff at Syracuse right now. So he just saw the Jim Boeheim retirement thing, and it's the Red Autry era, baby. So Tim does great work at Syracuse. And then Brian McLaughlin is the voice of Vermont men's basketball, who is in the field as a 15 seed. So this guy is going to be calling an NCAA tournament game. Those two will be breaking down this bracket. Go check out Just College Hoops on the Just Sports Network, and we will link it in the episode description. I just got off the road, so I'm looking at the bracket here for the first time. Do you want to go region by region, like what stands out real quick? We'll go rapid fire, like a minute on each region.
Yeah, we'll go real quick so we can get into the baseball talk. But I will say, like, again, this is something I'm really excited about this show. College basketball is probably my second favorite sport, to be honest, like the second favorite thing to watch. And I felt like this was a great addition to the network, and we're going to continue to grow that show. Like, this is a really good starting point, and they nailed the conference tournaments, that's for sure. So I'm a big Miami fan, just for transparency here. So I like the draw that my Hurricanes got, Even though I went to Syracuse, just grew up going to the U, going to all those games. So I like the draw for the U, and I think it's going to be a fun little path for them.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. So I've got it here. I'm looking in the South right now. Alabama's the number 1 overall seed. Obviously, if you're following college hoops at all, you know Brandon Miller might be the best college player in America, but he was an accessory to an accessory. He supplied a gun to somebody allegedly supplied a gun. Sorry, thank you for correcting me. That ended up being involved in a murder of a young woman. But he gets to play
buckets, and that's how it is, bro. Like it's unfortunate, but that's how it is. Like it's unbelievable. After that, goes and gets like 46.
Yeah,
like it's just yeah. We don't need to go into that, but he's obviously playing. He's good to go.
Yeah, so he's gonna play. Alabama's a really good team. The 5-12 here is 2 really good teams in San Diego State and College of Charleston. College of Charleston, one of the 2 30-win teams, along with Houston. Virginia, I like Furman in the 13-4. Does that make any sense?
Dry school Furman over there, who banged their baseball program. So I don't. We don't like Furman him for that. We don't Beautiful like field too. That's just sitting there rotting away. Very disappointing.
Go Hoos. Arizona is one of my picks to win it all. They've got size out the ass. Their head coach is Tommy Lloyd, who was like the lead recruiter at Gonzaga under Mark Few. He brought Umar Ballo, who's like this massive 7-foot guy, and then Tubelis is great too. So they play Princeton. That's my takeaway in the South. East, Purdue. If you haven't watched Zach Edey, it's not very fun to watch. He's like 7'4", 300 pounds.
Huge guy.
Insane. So Duke and Oral Roberts is the 5-12, but how about FAU as the 9 seed in there?
Owl up, baby. Owl up. We've been following the Owls all year long. My buddies from home, my mom, Boca Raton resident. I saw Lane Kiffin the other day. It's just this is an Owl town. We're ready to go.
How about that? 6-11 is Kentucky and Providence. Kentucky was pretty underwhelming until late. Providence is awesome, and Ed Cooley is the man, the head coach there. And then Marquette is the 2 against Vermont. Love Brian. He's a great podcast host. Go listen. I love Marquette a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh no, Marquette's gonna crush him. I'm sorry, Brian.
West. Kansas is the 1 seed in the West. They kind of felt gypped because the 1 in the Midwest is Houston. I feel like Houston would have been the 1 in the South had it not been for Bama. So Kansas going out West kind of sucks. Arkansas, Illinois. That game is going to suck out loud. Yeah. So bad.
Yeah.
St. Mary's VCU is the 5-12. Rick Pitino against Danny Hurley in the 13-4, Iona and UConn. And then with Gonzaga on the 3 line, this is probably the year that they win it all because they're not expected to win it all.
100%. 100%. That's my pick. I'm excited to hear what the college basketball guys have to say about that. I think this is the year of the Zags. I really do.
How about that? All right. And then in the Midwest, Houston is the 1 seed there. They just lost in the American Conference Championship because they were without Marcus Sasser, who is far and away their best player. If he's healthy, they may win it all. If he's not, they'll probably not make it through the first weekend. You've got the U against Drake. Are you scared of Drake?
Not at all.
Okay. You should be scared of the Kent State Golden Flashes
Not at all.
In the second round. Kent State is going to beat Indiana. Shout out Maction. Kent State is wild.
Looking forward to that cakewalk to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, and then shout out Central New York, Colgate as the 15 seed with Texas. All right, enough of college hoops. Tell me about the World Baseball Classic in Miami.
Yeah, that was one of the coolest environments I've been into. I mean, from the moment that you get there, right, you see like the Dominican Republic guys warming up on the right field side. You've got, Venezuela warming up on the other side. You walk up, you got, Miguel Cabrera just chopping it up with Albert Pujols. And it's just like that in front of me in itself was just like a holy shit, just, like 5 feet in front of me and just couldn't hear what they were saying. But I imagine they're talking about anything. I could listen to that conversation. That could be a podcast every day of just listening to whatever they're talking about. But, I think what was really awesome was the way you could kind of feel the excitement building as people started to like coming out from like the party outside, music out there. The Dominican Republic showed out strong. I'd say it was probably 70% them, maybe 30% Venezuela. And that's not to slight the Venezuelan fans. They were loud, but you just felt the excitement brewing, the intros get going. And then by the time first pitch started, there was just a buzz and energy that I've never really felt. And, I know you could joke and say, oh yeah, well, you covered the Marlins coming up. Like that was like your first gig. Of course, you've never felt that. It's beyond that. Honestly, I've been fortunate enough to go to several World Series games, and postseason games, and all different types of environments. And I don't think I've ever seen a baseball game quite like that one. Even going to a definitive Game 6 in the World Series, where it was win or go home. I don't know if I necessarily had the same feeling of the fans hanging on every pitch. And maybe it's more of an international fan thing. Maybe it's more of the rivalry that comes with, my country versus yours, who's the better talent factory. Maybe it's a culmination of things. But there was something about that environment that was different than anything I've ever really seen. And mind you, this was slow. Like this game was not fast. These World Baseball Classic games are not by the new rules, which is how it should be. But all I was thinking was, I was like, man, you're seeing all this excitement and what this is building up for baseball. And then we're going to parlay that right into a season where I think it's going to be the most watchable baseball we've seen in 10 years. So I'm really excited, but I thought this was one of the most special environments I've ever been to. And growing up, going to these was a blast for me. My dad used to take me. And I fell in love with the tournament then, at the old football stadium in Miami, going to those. And to go back there now, quote unquote, working with a credential, as I'm unfortunately not able to go with my dad anymore. It was a pretty special and pretty surreal opportunity. And it was cool to start it off with such a banger of a game like that one.
I'm sure that it brought up some of those memories that made you love baseball again, because I know you love baseball, but thinking about something as near and dear to you as your dad, who like introduced you to this game, that had to feel, I don't know, like, was that more emotion around a baseball field that you felt in years?
I mean, yeah, man. I think just like walking, I go into auto. I mean, you think you can kind of tell like what kind of guys we are now and like what our tendencies are. And of course, I feel like I'm an emotional guy, but I feel like I don't wear my emotions on my sleeve. Like I keep them all inside. Yeah. And I'm telling you, man, if you had a camera on me when I walked out of the tunnel straight into the field when they were taking batting practice, and I see, the DR jerseys, and I see the Venezuela jerseys, and I see all of the players that, we talk about on a daily basis here in this setting. I had the flashback of walking up, down the seats with my dad. And this time I'm walking up through a tunnel, and I was smiling ear to ear. I could feel it. And I'm like, I just in like I can't believe I'm doing this kind of thing. But also it just shows you the importance of the tournament, man. Like again, going and covering, the All-Star game or whatever notable event, super cool. But there was something special about this that just, I can't quite put it into words. And for those who may not have watched the World Baseball Classic yet, I really encourage you to. I will say, like, some of the other games can get a little flat, the Great Britain versus Canada. I was laboring through that a little bit today. Watched for the prospects, watched to see how Harry Ford and Bo Naylor were receiving. I swear. But like, other than that, like, it was pretty boring. There's something special about these DR, Venezuela, even Team Israel, USA, like those kind of matchups.
Well, guess what's going on right now? Top one, Venezuela up 4-0 on Puerto Rico. They're taking it to Jose Barrios, 3-run homer from Santander. So he's locked in. Venezuela did get the win over the DR, which is an upset, even though those could be the two best teams, not just in that pool, like maybe in the World Baseball Classic. We talk about Japan, we talk about the States. Venezuela is sneaky loaded. They're the most underrated team, and they're fourth.
Yeah, what's funny, man? You know what the sense I got in the post-game presser? Because it was a post-game presser. It was Santander. It was Martin Perez, who threw fantastic, by the way. That guy just knows how to pitch. It's just that simple. And David Peralta was there. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, like, are these guys superstars? No. But these guys are Major League Baseball players, and damn good ones with, two of them have more than a decade of service time. Another one, in Santander will very soon.
Yeah.
These guys don't give a shit if the Dominican Republic has more all-stars. They think that they feel like they are on the same playing field as them. And that's kind of what they said. Again, it was mostly in Spanish. So I was, really testing my Spanish skills there, but I did feel pretty confident in at least understanding a lot of what they were saying.
Yeah.
And from the lens of what they were saying was, look, we face these guys all the time. Do we face them all on the same team? No, but like, look at the Dodgers, look at the Padres. Like, we do face some lineups that look a lot like this. We feel like we're right there with them. And when you look at the Venezuelan lineup, like, they've got their own stars, but I think the big difference is if you have major leaguers top to bottom, which Venezuela does, like, you're not faced. I think where it becomes a bit more like David versus Goliath
is when Harry Ford is your best player.
Yes, correct. When you got Harry Ford coming in, or you've got the guy that's been playing in the Mexican League for like 6 years, has been out of affiliated baseball. That's your first or second reliever. Like for Venezuela, man, they closed the game out with Jose Alvarado. Like I understand that the lineup's not like big name, but it's all major league names. And that's what's amazing about baseball, man. That's all you need. Is just a good team, and you can beat anyone on any given day. And in this Venezuela team, they want it, man. You see them coming out of the dugout on every play, waving everybody home. Salvi's running out there in his full catcher's gear. Like, it was just super special. And I think it's going to be one of those things where you can't predict who's going to win. And God bless Peter trying to handicap this thing. He even has said it's impossible.
We're gonna have so much coverage of the World Baseball Classic coming at the end of this week, over the weekend, through the championship. Again, me, Aram, Peter, and Will Cohen, our dynamite videographer and editor, is going to be down there as well. So we are going to be pumping out content. 2 more quick questions for you. You were at the World Series in 2021. What got louder, the DR in Venezuela or the World Series?
I don't think it's necessarily close. It was the DR in Venezuela. And also the game I was at in Houston, I'm fairly positive the roof was closed. So I believe. So in that case too, like it's still echoey. Like, that was the one thing that the stadium did have working in its favor, is that the roof was closed. So it definitely was a bit of an echo chamber. But man, there was a couple plays where it was so loud, even in the press box. Like, it was almost like piercingly loud. And I think like one of the Acuna double plays with Sandy rolling it, that was one that it was like they were cheering for 5 minutes almost. I've never heard anything like it.
Yeah. Last one, was that crowd and that energy an indictment on the Miami Marlins? I think a lot of people traveled in to see it. So I don't think that is the Marlins fan base that is all of a sudden a DR fan or a Venezuelan fan. We know Miami is heavily Cuban. So, hey, there may be some like Dominican people coming up for this. That's not the same crowd, but knowing that place can fill up, knowing that place can get raucous, I don't know. Does it just intensify the feeling about the lethargy in Lone Depot?
Yes. Again, I've never really seen it like that. I've never seen the press box like that. I've never seen a media scrum like that. Like, when I've covered Marlins games,
but it's a unique event. Like, it's not a Marlins game.
But that said, like, I do see people saying like, oh, 35,000, that was the reported attendance when I was there. This is what the Marlins would be if they win. I don't know about that, man. Like, there's a reason why this event's in Miami. It's very easy for a lot of these people to get to. If you live in the DR, if you live in Puerto Rico, if you live in Cuba, and even if you don't, if you live here currently, like, it's so expensive to get to the ballpark. Not a lot of people are willing to pay that. This is a special event where you're willing to bite the bullet, pay the $150 a head and do what you got to do. I do think it's an indictment on the Marlins and the fact that, like, there is baseball interest. And if the team is good, more people will show up. And I think you can see that because there's no really other environment where it's that packed for the WBC unless you go to Japan, like, right, or where some of these other games are. So, I definitely feel like this is something that is a reminder when you triple the average attendance for an event like this of the Miami Marlins. It's a bit of an eye opener.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, Corbin Carroll, 8 years, $111 million with a club option for $28 million in 2031. 2031 feels like a really long time away.
I don't want to think about 2031.
That's crazy. I don't want to think about 2031 either. But the Diamondbacks, 1 year removed from locking up Ketel Marte long-term, decide to shove $111 million in the face of just baseball's number 1 overall prospect that has played 32 major league games.
Yep. Yeah.
I like it. And I think we like it for very similar reasons. The reason you pick Carroll over Henderson, I think, is very telling as to why we like this deal so much.
Yeah, it's funny because I always talked about how hard that was to kind of like figure out floor versus ceiling. How are we stacking these guys up against each other? And it was a really tough process. In the last top 100 list and this updated one, which will also for 2023, which will also feature Corbin Carroll at number one. You see most lists have Gunnar, and I think that's because he's probably the safest bet with just what he does with the bat, and I think just how polished he is. But Corbin obviously polished in his own right. I just think when you make a deal like this for Corbin Carroll, like you look at Gunnar, he has to hit for him to be a productive and valuable baseball player. And while he has good complementary tools, he has to hit to be a productive baseball player. Corbin Carroll, if he's a 100 WRC plus guy for his entire career, which would be a massive disappointment given his talent, he is still going to be a very good player for a long time. And I know that on the back end of that deal, they'd probably be like, this kind of sucks that they're paying, a 28-year-old $28 million to, probably produce a 2.5, 3 F4, which is probably what Corbin Carroll would do with a 100 WRC plus. But you feel like you've seen enough to at least come away with him at very least being a league slightly above average hitter, a slightly above league average hitter. So if he is that with all of the other tools he has, you feel really good about that. On top of that, his ceiling is off the charts, and this could end up being one of the steals of steals. So I think this was a great deal for the Diamondbacks. Risky, sure, but you look at the next 5+ years, they're paying him $1 million this year. They're paying him $3 million next year, $5 million in 2025, $10 million in 2026, $12 million after that, 14, 28, 28, and then the option for 28. So I can promise that even if Corbin is on the lower end, even the $14 million deal, like you're going to get good value for that. I mean, that's a bargain. The only question will be if he doesn't fully pan out the $28 million those 2 years, but I don't think they're going to have to worry about that.
I don't think so either. He's still going to be in his 20s in terms of age. And Carroll, like, I don't know, man. There's something about his floor. And you say that Gunnar may be the safe one because his bat is so good. But with Carroll, I don't think it's even close. Like if Gunnar, and I don't want to use Christian Yelich as, I guess I am going to use Christian Yelich as an example, but that guy was a flawless hitter. And then all of a sudden his lower back goes out. And he's a 1.5 win player, a 2 win player.
Yeah.
Because he's a league average hitter. That's Gunnar if he gets hurt.
Correct.
With Carroll, even if he gets hurt and he is a 100 WRC plus guy, he is an elite defensive outfielder. He can swipe a ton of bags. Again, if he gets hurt, that may be altered. But he's going to walk. Like Gunnar's going to walk. Carroll's going to walk. And he's faster. And he's a better defender. Yeah. So I feel better about if shit hits the fan with Corbin Carroll. And you're right. Like the ceiling is best player in baseball for Carroll. The ceiling for Gunnar is a top 5 hitter in baseball.
Yes. And I think to kind of like, I think you're right on. That's exactly what I'm trying to verbalize. And I think that the best way to break it down is like Corbin Carroll's profile is higher floor in terms of just like a higher floor value of what you're going to get. Gunnar's bat is really, really safe. But again, like that, if he doesn't hit, it's going to be really hard to be a productive baseball player. And I always love looking at prospects where it's like, okay, if he doesn't hit as much, how productive is he going to be? Or how valuable is he going to be? If he slows down a little bit, how valuable is he going to be? And Corbin Carroll, if you take away one of the tools, if he doesn't hit for as much power, if he slows down a little bit, like if one of those things happens, he's still really damn good. So I think that makes you feel pretty good about, the possible outcomes and the odds of him being a successful Major League Baseball player. And that's why he's the number one prospect for us at 22 years old. And I think the Diamondbacks got great value here, but on Corbin's side, he guarantees himself $100 million, and then he's going to hit free agency potentially at 30 years old and probably get another bag. So he comes out pretty well with this one.
And to this type of deal, you and I both say more, please. Like we saw Jeff Passan report that Curtis Mead was an extension candidate for the Rays before he makes his major league debut. More of this.
Yes.
If you have this guy, don't have him resent you right away because you're handing him a check for $720,000. It's a lot of money, yes. Major League Baseball players and top prospects understand that they can manipulate your financial earnings by keeping you as broke as possible until you hit free agency. The goal of every Major League Baseball player is to accrue 6 years of service time. Yes. Everybody's goal is to accrue 6. You're kind of screwed, relatively speaking. Like, obviously, these guys can afford homes and nice cars on the league minimum, but relatively speaking, even if you are one of the best players in baseball, you are financially being screwed relatively to the rest of Major League Baseball until you hit free agency. Yep. Here, you're almost like buying their affection right away. Mm-hmm. Corbin Carroll, I guarantee you, is exponentially more interested in re-signing with the Arizona Diamondbacks when this thing is up than if they just ran through the third year of arbitration, he hits the market, and Arizona's like, wait, we want you back.
100%. Absolutely, 100%. And what is also interesting is I think this was really a sign of the direction of the Diamondbacks, that we're looking to be competitive soon, and we think we're going to be good for a long time with the core that we have. So here's our first step. Let's lock up one of the key pieces of our future at an affordable rate so we can do more moving forward. And I don't think that it will be a surprise to anybody if the Diamondbacks are players in free agency a year or two from now. I do believe that they really were interested in Xander Bogaerts, and I appreciate them not forcing the issue there. I think now, with knowing that you have Corbin Carroll locked up for cheap for the next decade almost, and you've got, a lot of other pieces that you have control of now, I wouldn't be surprised to see them dish out some long-term deals next offseason. And I think baseball is going to be in a good spot in Arizona moving forward. This was a great gesture to the fans, I think, from the franchise. It was a great gesture to their potential face of the franchise. And I think it's a great indication of where this organization is headed.
Yeah, 100%. All right. 3 pitchers that I want to talk about that threw in spring training yesterday. Let's start with Jared Schuster with the Atlanta Braves, because I think Atlanta and Brian Snitker just solved the 5-starter debate. Yeah, it should be Schuster. Mike Soroka was set back by a hamstring pull, and he's going to throw another side session this week. He may throw to live hitters this week, according to Jeff Schultz of The Athletic. So Soroka, I mean, this dude is going on 2.5 years removed from his last major league outing. You can't count on him to be the 5. No. Ian Anderson and Bryce Elder are the options right now. Schuster just went 3 of 1 hit ball. The only hit was a homer to Brian Reynolds, but he set down 12 of the 13 guys that he saw.
Yep.
I mean, Schuster's been throwing so well this spring. He's a quick worker. He's got prospect pedigree. Yeah. He threw really well in double and triple.
Pitch clock will not be affecting this guy.
No. Schuster he will outpace like the guy.
He will outpace the pitch clock, first of all. I think he's the guy. And sorry for speaking over you there. I think he's the guy. You kind of started to point this out earlier. I think you were kind of first on this of let's watch Schuster here. Like, he's starting to turn some heads. And, I liked him as a depth arm. I definitely thought that he was a candidate to, plug in and spot start and, maybe show it as he refines his command. And he's always had great command, but I felt like he had to kind of be perfect or close to it to be successful because of his stuff. And that was why I was like, he could be that Braxton Garrett type, like the Marlins have. But I think he's kind of taken his game to another level now. Fastball, and we'll see if it sustains, because remember, these are more 2-3 inning outings. But so far in these 3 inning outings, his fastball has been a full tick up. And that's always big for anybody, but it's even bigger for a changeup guy. And that's his best pitch, right? His changeup's his best pitch. So to see Schuster's fastball a tick up and have him working the changeup off of it from his arm slot. And I think he's also improved his slider from what I've seen. You mentioned you wanted to talk about him, so I did go back and watch some of the extra pitches and stuff like that. Slider looks sharper than it's been in the past. And I'd imagine that, Jared Schuster knew, hey, I got to sharpen that thing up. It's got to at least be an average pitch to be competitive at the big league level. So you improve the slider, fastball ticks up. Why can't this guy be a 4-starter, at the big league level? He was really good in the minors, and they only need him to be 5. So I think he's the guy, and I think he's ready. He's 24. I think he's ready to go.
So if I'm not mistaken, the Brian Reynolds homer, 4th inning, 1 out, Reynolds, I think, was just sitting changeup, got one and hit it to the stratosphere.
Gonna happen.
Not much that you can do about that, especially with a guy like Brian Reynolds. But Schuster, so far this spring, 3 appearances, 8 2/3, 2 hits, including that homer. That's his only earned run allowed. 9 punch outs, 1 walk. 8 2/3 innings.
Shoved against the Sox too. And I know he's a Northeast kid. I think he's a Massachusetts area kid.
Yeah.
That was the one that I saw, the outing that I saw where I was like, whoa, fastball was jumping. I'd never seen him get that many high whiffs. I'm very in on Schuster being the 5 for them. And I think they knew this. I really do think they knew this was coming, which is why we saw them trade Kyle Muller and Freddie Tarnok. Both those guys are shipped out. I promise that the A's had interest in Schuster. I promise they did. I feel like the Braves, and this is speculation, I have nothing on this, but I feel like the Braves may have said, hey, we'd rather trade you Muller and Tarnok than Schuster, because here he is performing the way he is and not on Oakland as part of that Sean Murphy package.
And you take Schuster out of the equation right now. If the Braves are 7 deep, Max Fried's a lefty, Kyle Wright, Charlie Morton, Spencer Strider, Ian Anderson, Bryce Elder, Mike Soroka, they're all right-handed.
Yep.
So you've got a second lefty. If we're just playing the numbers game, having Fried and Schuster bookending that rotation with Strider, Wright, and Morton in between, with Anderson and Elder available to make spot starts, and whatever you get from Soroka is bonus, this is a World Series frontrunner if Schuster is right.
Correct. And again, he just needs to be a 5. If he has a low 4 ERA, you're happy with that, I think.
Yes, very happy with that. Michael Kopech, you want more from. He had a 3.5 last year, limited time. Kopech was hurt all offseason. He comes back. Kopech throws 3 perfect innings and tops at 98 with the fastball in a 1-1 tie with the Angels today. Kopech, just 1 punch out in those 3 innings, but 9 up, 9 down in your first spring appearance, and that's the most velo we've seen from him since he was a swingman. If he's good, that unlocks a new level to the White Sox.
They need him to be good.
Need him to be good.
Because I feel better about him being good than Lance
Giolito
or Clevenger or Giolito. Yeah, there was points where we look at Kopech and we're like, this guy looks like what we thought he would be. So what were most of those injuries? Were they lower body stuff or were they arm related over the last? I felt like they were lower body, right? Like hammy, like that kind of stuff, if I'm not mistaken. Like I'm hoping, because my only concern is we've seen flashes of this. Is the velo going to taper off as the year goes on, and then we see him just kind of limp to the finish line given his injury history? He's only 26.
Yeah, he had surgery on his right knee ahead of this season.
Okay. So that could have been something that was bothering him. That's his driving leg, gets it right. Maybe he's feeling better. That's great news. Something to monitor 100%.
Last thing, bullpen related, and this will take us into top 15 relievers for the 2023 season. Our penultimate, one of the best words in the English language, our penultimate ranking. We've got top 10 bullpens tomorrow. Peter and I are going to do that. And then we move on to the divisional previews, which will be great.
Yes, I can't wait.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
Wait. That's going to be so fun.
We're almost done. This is our last individual ranking episode. But Ben Joyce threw for the Angels today. What do you do with Ben Joyce? Your honest opinion. Like, he can't really command the fastball right now. It's not like he needs to work on a secondary, because 105 is going to come if he has it. Does he need more minor league innings to work on fastball command? Or is it, hey, you throw 103, take the ball and go throw innings for the LA Angels?
Yeah, I feel like with Joyce, and I think, what was it? It was 8 balls, 4 strikes today.
Yeah.
His fastball is going to play, right? I feel like you should just start him in triple, especially because of the way. If this was last year, maybe I'd say just fuck it, throw him in the bigs. They made some additions to the bullpen. You don't need to throw Ben Joyce into fight or flight mode. I don't think so. But I think it's a really interesting topic, because that is a name that does get brought up a little bit more frequently. We're going to talk about him on the call up for like imminent debuts, rookies who are going to make debuts. And I think Fangraphs did a good job of compiling a list on those guys. I haven't seen it yet, but they always do a good job of doing that, I think, every year. But I want to just kind of talk about some of those guys out of camp. Ben Joyce, as a professional baseball player, has thrown more pitches, more fastballs over 100 miles per hour than under 100 miles per hour. Like, I know we always talk about pitch shape, and I'm a big proponent of, shape is more important than velocity. However, when you throw 102, 103, velocity can take over, and that's what he does. So I feel like get those mechanics just about right and triple and go to the bigs. But if the Angels have a situation kind of like some other teams where they really like what they've got with their pitching coach at the big league level, then maybe bring him into the big leagues and let him be, the kind of meaningless innings eater, come in the fifth of like a blow up start, come into the seventh when you're up 8, and just have him work on things until he's ready. I think the stuff is ready to blow away big league hitters. It's not a matter of guys hitting him. It's a matter of him just walking guys.
And it dominated Double-A last year when he did get into professional baseball. 13 innings, 20 punch outs, 4 walks. Can't beat that.
No.
The 4 walks is so encouraging in 13 innings. He faced 57 batters. He walked 4 of them. That's awesome.
Look, I wouldn't be shocked if they started him in the big leagues, and I don't think it would be a mistake either way.
So he does. Here's the thing. Whenever he throws a clunker of a fastball, whenever he throws 99 that like zips over somebody's helmet, it's going to go viral because it's super dangerous.
It's so scary.
It's pretty much a weapon. Like that's a bullet coming out of his hand.
Could kill somebody.
But 3 innings, he's walked 2. It's not like he's walked 6 in 3 innings.
No, it was more today. And in other spots, I think, coming into today was landing his fastball for a strike 65% of the time.
Yeah.
That's fine. That'll play.
All right. Best MLB relievers for the 2023 season. No honorable mentions because we did 15. Starting with 15, it was one of the best reliever ERAs in the game last year, Evan Phillips with the LA Dodgers. Evan Phillips, 64 appearances. He had a 1.14 ERA and a 1.94 FIP. 63 innings, punched out 77. That's a 33% K rate. He averaged 96 on his fastball. Evan Phillips was a nomad to start his career. He was Atlanta, then he was Baltimore, and then it was the Dodgers. And like he was DFA'd a couple times in there. And then all of a sudden he just figured it out. And he was one of the best relievers in baseball a year ago.
It's remarkable. I mean, relievers are in today's game. It's so fucked up the whole way this thing happens, man. You can't write anybody off. I love it though. I really do, because everything could go wrong for you as a starting pitcher, and you could find your way as a reliever. I mean, look at Mark Appel. He's even somehow hanging around as a big league reliever. Phillips found it with the slider. I mean, that was really it, but also the fastball shape. And I don't know if it was something with like the way that it ticked up velocity wise, shape wise, whatever it was. I don't know if you have like Savant in front of you in terms of like the chart of velocity, but the slider data and just the numbers on it, like a 20% swinging strike rate on your slider is comical. Opponents hit 170 against him last year, under 500 OPS off that slider. Like that's something that I feel like we talk about volatility with relievers. I think Phillips is going to be just fine. I think he's not going anywhere. I think he figured something out and he's here to stay.
So Savant kind of restructured their arsenal for some guys. It's not a slider anymore for Phillips. It's a sweeper. And he also threw a cutter that he didn't throw in 2021. So that might have been the ad there. I'm not sure what's going on.
Oh my God. Regard. They call it a sweeper instead of
they call it a sweeper. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. Okay.
Yeah. They added sweeper for a lot of guys. So now a lot of guys are throwing sweepers instead of sliders.
Yeah. It's a Yankees organization thing, top to bottom.
Apparently Evan Phillips too. Yeah. I mean, Phillips, you mentioned the fastball. His fastball opponents hit 105 with a 158 slug against it. That's really interesting.
He found something with the heater too. Look at the numbers against the heater previously, like something, and maybe it was because of the way that the sweeper set up the fastball, but something clicked there.
4-seam fastball, opponents went from hitting 368 to 103.
Yeah. I mean, just absolutely remarkable stuff there. The one thing I can point towards is just pure velocity, at least, right? You look at 2020, he averaged 94.5. 2021 averaged 95.4. 2022 averages 96.
And spin was up 100 RPMs.
Yeah. So pitch shape was better and velocity was better. Usually you're going to be in pretty good shape there.
Yes. All right. Number 14, Camilo Doval with the San Francisco Giants. we thought he was underwhelming. And then we look at the end of the year, and he's got a 2.53 ERA and a sub-3 FIP. So if that's an underwhelming year, you'll take it. 80 punch outs in 67 and 2/3 innings. It's a 28% K rate. He did walk 10.5% of batters, but you throw gas, you limit opponents to hitting 213 against you. He sat 99.4 with a fastball with cutter qualities.
Yeah.
He's really good, man. And I understand the Peter Apple buy-in to Camilo Doval.
Yeah. What does he want to call him? The Velociraptor?
Yeah. I don't know why. I asked him why, and he was like, because he throws like a dinosaur or something. I was like, okay. Really weird. Yeah.
And then wondering why it's not catching on. Right. No, but I mean, you can see why Peter loves Camilo Doval, and you can see why Giants fans do, right? I mean, what is interesting is that his cutter was his worst pitch, right? It kind of got hit at times. So I don't know if it's about the location there. I think he might have had some bad batted ball luck if you look at the expected stats, but I am interested to see how that cutter can continue to evolve for him and be a more effective pitch. I think obviously it has been good for him in spurts. It's not as consistent. And I always find it interesting with these relievers, like they struggle. They're so weird with their command. Like Doval landed his slider for a strike 70% of the time, and his fastball less than 60% of the time. Yeah. Like it's just amazing to me that these guys command their breaking ball, some of these relievers, better than their fastball. That's really the missing piece for Doval. If Doval can land the cutter and the sinker at the same rate as the slider, I think he's in the same conversation with Emmanuel Clase and some of the best in the game.
I think so too. What's weird is for these guys, I think that throw as hard as they do and are max effort each time they throw, sometimes throwing a breaking ball is easier for them because the mental cue when throwing a breaking ball is I'm going to rip this shit out of my fingers as hard as I can. So they have that feeling versus like a fastball. You do have to feel it off your fingertips a little bit. And I think some guys are like, I'm going to throw the shit out of this. And then they do, and they don't know where it's going. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to throw the shit out of my slider. And that's the right way to throw a slider.
Yep. No, I totally agree with that. And we've had a couple like player breakdowns recently. Dax Fulton of the Marlins on the call up was talking about how like he has two sliders, and his softer slider is kind of like that recalibrate, get it over and get his body synced up again and his release point synced up again. It is a slider for him.
Yeah. Number 13, Brian Abreu with the Houston Astros. Ooh. You would think Abreu is one after his postseason. I mean, his postseason was the stuff of legends. Sat 97 with the heater. In 60 1/3 innings during the regular season, he punched out 88, had a sub-2 ERA and a FIP at 2.12. Struck out 36% of batters during the 2022 season, and opponents hit 206 against him. It's not just the postseason, folks. This guy might actually be a top 6 or 7 reliever in the game, and he's not even close to being the closer for Houston.
That's the most messed up part. and that's why they were such a cheat code in the postseason, is it just was like, oh my gosh, wait, they still have Abreu? They still have this guy available. They still have this guy available.
Right.
You can put this guy in the closer role, and I think he'd be just fine. He's 25 years old as well. And clearly just another similar profile to some of the other guys we talked about. What I like about him, though, is it's four-seamer with jump. It's slider that tunnels off of it. And then he'll also give you kind of another look with a curveball in the mid-80s. I don't even think we've seen the best of Abreu, and I do think he's going to be a top 5 or 6 reliever in baseball, maybe after this year, because what he did on the big stage, I know guys get hot, but something about that just seems sustainable.
Yes. Mentioned the velo, upper 90s. That curveball, though. Opponents hit 130. He threw it 40% of the time in 2 strike counts. Had a 51% whiff rate overall. So if you're throwing a pitch that gets a 51% whiff rate, you're throwing it half the time in 2 strike counts. Guess what? About half the time, you're going to get a punch out. That's how we accrued 88 and 60 innings.
Yeah, I mean, it's just nasty stuff. I'm excited. He's one of the top of my list of guys I'm looking forward to watching this year. And I am interested to see if he uses that curveball more because, as you note, I think it was arguably as nasty and as effective as his slider.
Yeah. Do you think Abreu, Montero, and Presley is the best bullpen trio off the dome in baseball?
Yes.
Like, who else would jump out?
I mean, with what Karinchak did, this past year, but still, I don't think it matches up. I think that's got to be number one.
It's insane. There's no break. You mentioned he's one of the guys you're most excited to watch. Guy I think I'm most excited to watch in a bullpen this year is number 12, and that's Yohan Duran with the Minnesota Twins. Duran, I mean, he's still pumping out 100-mile-an-hour splinkers in spring training. He sat 100.9 miles an hour with his four-seam fastball, 67 and two-thirds innings, 89 punch-outs, 16 walks. He had a 1.86 ERA. Opponents hit 203 against him. I mean, he is obviously the splinker is going to make pitching ninja, and it's going to make pitching ninja every time he throws it. But he throws this high 80s power curve that opponents hit a $127 against and swung and missed 50% of the time. That 2-pitch mix, I'm so glad he's not a starting pitching prospect anymore.
I like forget that he was.
Like last year, at the beginning of last year, he was a starter.
And I didn't like him that much as a starter. I really didn't. It's amazing how you can just like not totally look the best as a starting pitching prospect and then look like the best, as a reliever.
This is the Aroldis Chapman thing.
Yeah, it really is. And it's one of those things where if you can be this dominant as a reliever, there's no reason for you to try to be a 3 or a 4 starter, right? And the command was always going to hold him back from that. But I think he's found a way to have that command down, at least in his 1-inning spurts now, because he didn't walk anybody. And that's the one unique trend here is like most of the guys we're going to talk about, they walked a lot of dudes. But if I have it correct, what was it, 17 walks in his 62 appearances last year?
16.
Like, 16 walks.
Yeah, don't give him that extra free pass.
I would never want to do that to him. That's insane. Like, that's insane. So obviously there's something that clicked command-wise for him. And on top of that, he sits closer to 101 than he does to 100. This spring training, by the way, small sample, 4 appearances, averaging 101.5 on the fastball.
That may lower as the season goes on.
Of course it will, but just like, what the fuck?
What the fuck? Like, are you created in a lab?
Yeah, I'm not saying he ticked up, but I can promise he's not ticking down.
Right, 100%. All right, number 11, AJ Minter, left-hander with the Atlanta Braves. And Minter, he just got outs every time he went out there, and it felt like he pitched every single game. 75 appearances last year. He had a 2.06 ERA in 70 innings, 94 punch-outs, 15 walks. He sat 97 with the fastball. That Braves bullpen has had a lot of people come and go. Like Tyler Matzek's been hurt. Luke Jackson's a TJ guy who's now in San Francisco. Will Smith is a free agent. Kenley Jansen had a 1-year cameo. They just grabbed Raisel Iglesias at last year's deadline. But the one consistent guy is Minter. And Minter's gotten better. He went from the 3rd best in that World Series winning bullpen to maybe the best. And him and Raisel Iglesias create this nasty 1-2 combo.
It's one of the best fastballs I think in baseball, really. Like it's 96 to 98, but the shape and from his release point. I mean, to get more than 30% whiff on your heater, to like that is ridiculous. And then another guy that it's fastball changeup. So the way his arsenal plays off of itself with the riding fastball, with the diving changeup, I mean, forget it. Even when the fastball's coming, you're going to miss under it. He's got it figured out. Run value of -12 on that 4-seamer.
Damn.
That thing plays, man.
And he's so available. That's another thing that I love about bullpen guys. It feels like the 4th or 5th best reliever in the bullpen is the one that's always out there for your favorite team. I feel like for Braves fans, if they turn on the TV late innings, it's AJ Minter out there.
Yeah.
And it's good when that guy that is constantly on your TV is really good.
Yeah, 100%. And again, one last thing, 6 feet tall. So riding fastball from 6 feet tall, low release point, and then the changeup off of that. Like, this is exactly what you want to craft up for a fastball changeup guy. So he's got it. This is a guy, another one. Volatility in this position, not worried about AJ Minter being good year in, year out. This is one of the relievers I would give a multi-year deal to.
Who is your bullpen arm on the Marlins that is always on the mound when you turn the TV on?
Oh gosh. Last year it was Tanner Scott.
Okay. Yeah, for my White Sox, it was Jose Ruiz for like the last couple of years. Ruiz.
Don Mattingly thought Tanner Scott was Josh Hader. He was in there every single spot. It was brutal.
Dude, Ruiz was good in 2021, but a 5.6 in 2019, a 4.6 in 2022. Like those are the years where I feel like I was watching Jose Ruiz all the time. All right, number 10. Felix Bautista sat 99 with his fastball and opponents hit 202. But Felix Bautista's splitter, opponents were 8 for 92 with 59 strikeouts against his splitter. That's why Felix Bautista of the Orioles is 10.
And you'd say just don't swing, but you can't because it looks like the fastball until the last second because this guy is 6'8" and releases it what feels like probably 45 feet from the plate. That's what makes him so good because his splitter is like just don't swing territory. Like it's so good, you're better off just not swinging. But the problem is it looks like his fastball. So when you have a fastball at 99 and it's 11 miles an hour of separation and you can't tell the difference between the two, that's up there with best reliever pitches. Felix Bautista's split finger's got to be up there, right, for most dominant reliever pitches. Because I mean, you just read the numbers. You got guys hitting below 100, and the expected batting average is actually lower. 087 batting average, 082 expected batting average. That's just screwed up.
Again, I tell you, 8 for 92 with 59 strikeouts against that pitch. So, whatever. Number 9, another Brave, Raisel Iglesias. Iglesias needed a change of scenery after that extension, which was really weird that the Angels jumped ship on him right away.
Yeah, that is bizarre, given that they're like trying to be good this year.
Do you know why? Like, were they just mailing it in and seeing whatever they could get there?
I guess it was like it's really interesting. Was that where our guy Tucker Davidson went?
That was the Tucker Davidson trade.
Okay. All right. Well, we love it then. Our guy Tucker Davidson, also another podcast for you to go check out. I know him and Peter just talked to the Arm Barn. They just talked to Patrick Sandoval, who's pitching in the World Baseball Classic against Team USA. So, that was a weird one. It really was because while he was expensive, maybe they wanted to clear up some money to just reinvest and do other things. But it just feels like this guy, you can, again, just kind of count on him. He's another one of those. He got the long-term deal. Maybe didn't pitch to the way that you would have hoped with a 3.10 ERA, but like that's kind of the bottom for him. Like you know that he's going to be a reliable back-end guy for you, I think, for a very long time. Like that's just what he is and what he's been.
And he got so good right away. 28 appearances with the Braves. He had a .34 ERA, 26 in the third innings, 1 earned run. I mean, dude, like he was an immediate upgrade over Kenley Jansen. And I think that Alex Anthopoulos saw blood in the water in Anaheim and said, I'm going to go grab this guy because I know that I have him on a longer deal. Yes, he's mid-90s with a fastball, but again, he's got some play. Like you feel okay giving him that multi-year deal, like you're saying. He's got a 4-pitch mix in the closer role.
Yeah. And which is great because, these guys are so finicky relievers where like some days, like just one of their pitches isn't working for them. And when they have 2 pitches, it's usually a disaster. He can go to a bunch of different things. And that's why I think he's kind of impervious to that reliever slump that we see a lot of other guys kind of go through. The other thing though, with Raisel Iglesias is when they made the trade, we said, okay, I can see them just wanting to get out from under that contract because it's a lot for a reliever and they want to potentially pay Ohtani. They want to make other moves, trying to make the team better overall.
Right.
What's interesting now is you see the deals that these other relievers are getting, and Raisel Iglesias' contract, which was like basically like a jaw-dropping, signing at the time in terms of what he got.
4 for 58.
Kind of paced the reliever market very quickly, was kind of irrelevant price-wise. We're seeing a lot of other less proven guys, less established guys get the same or more in the market over the last year.
Yeah. All right. Number 8 is Liam Hendriks. Hendriks, of course, he's not going to throw this year, but you got to slap him on this list, man. And
did they say he's not throwing this year? I thought he said that they was going to make an effort to. I wouldn't count that guy out of anything.
Right.
Right.
But I mean, he is dealing with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which like is a really hard thing to get back into game shape from. And, I wouldn't blame him at all if he took this year off.
No, absolutely not. I just, from the stand in the aisle of just like, I wouldn't doubt this guy just to overcoming it. But that said, the expectation, I think, is fair to say he may not pitch this year, and obviously a lot more important things at stake right now.
Yes, 100%. And like, obviously, we've talked about this before, but Liam Hendriks, we know is going to fight like hell. We know is going to get back on the mound at some point very soon.
Yes.
When he's on the mound, he's one of the best closers in baseball. And even an underwhelming year a year ago saw him rip an ERA under 3, a FIP under 2.7. He sat 98 with the fastball. He's one of the more consistent closers in the game. And again, this is a guy that mixes enough pitches to survive on an off night, whether it be the fastball, whether it be the curveball.
85 punchies and 57 2/3. He just gets outs, dude. And I do think that last year, I believe it was a little bit of just a contagion of bad performance across the team, because you look at a lot of the underlying metrics too. They're kind of right on par with everything else we've seen from him, over his career. You look at the pitch data, the pitch numbers, you look at the expected numbers on batted balls, everything like that. Like, he probably pitched well enough to have an even better ERA, and he had a 2.81. So this guy is another one, 34 years old. Obviously he's going to be fighting through a lot of different things, but when he gets back, assuming that, his body holds up just fine and everything like that, like, there's another one that I think he's going to age like fine wine in terms of what he does on the mound. Yes, he's a high velocity guy, but like you mentioned, the pitch mix, the 2 breaking balls, I think he'll be effective until he doesn't want to pitch anymore. I really do.
Yes. So Rysel, Liam Hendriks, and Ryan Presley, who's number 7, they all kind of fit the similar mold of being 3 or more pitch closers. And before we dive into Presley, just real quick, I had this thought about Alex Reyes when I heard that, because I think that's what everybody was dreaming on with Alex Reyes, right? When he made that move to the bullpen, when he was an all-star for that front half with St. Louis, we saw a guy with a 4 or 5 pitch mix in the closer role. Yeah. And we had the same conversation about him that we do Liam Hendriks and Rysel and Ryan Presley, where, okay, say the slider isn't working for Ryan Presley. He's still got fastball, curveball. That was Alex Reyes. So if he can unlock that, I mean, we're talking about that kind of guy as well. We have no idea if he's ever going to unlock that, because he's just been so injury laden.
It's just health. Yeah.
It's just health. Number 7 is Ryan Presley with the Astros. He is the closer. He is deserving of that closer role. Sub-3 ERA in 50 appearances, 65 punch-outs, 13 walks in 48 1/3 innings. Struck out 36% of hitters. Opponents hit $178. Against his slider, opponents hit 182. By the way, he also has a 2,500 RPM fastball. And by the way, he has a 3,300 RPM curveball.
Yeah,
that is vomit inducing.
Yeah, that's insane. That's up there with, like, I don't know if I've seen many other pitches with more RPM. Like 3,300's got to be top 1 or 2 in baseball in that department. And it's just nasty. It's just absolutely nasty. What's interesting too is while the fastball is high spin, doesn't have quite the shape that you'd like to see. And that's where it's good that he has, at least 3 pitches. He'll mix in a changeup here and there, but it really has 3 pitches that he can go to, because the fastball, when he's not spotting, if he's missing a little bit more over the middle, like, that pitch does get hit hard sometimes. Like, it did get hit pretty hard last year, but he can go to 2 breaking balls. He has so much confidence in them and lands them for a strike so often. Presley's been a guy that all of a sudden you look at his body of work and it's like, man, he's been good every single year. 2020 was like one outlier where he had a 3.43, and 2020, I always throw that out the window regardless.
Yeah.
He hasn't had a bad year since 2017. Like, he has been good as a reliever for 5+ straight years. Like, that's pretty impressive.
I'm waiting on Pitcher List to load, because I want to tell you where he stacks up in terms of average curveball spin. But yeah,
I would bet a lot of money, just based on what I would assume to know, that he's 1 or 2.
Yes. Like, this guy spins the shit out of it.
Yeah.
All right. So if that ever loads, we'll revisit. Andres Munoz is number 6 with Seattle. He throws fuzz. There were 2 qualified relievers that sat 100 or better with their fastball: Yohan Duran and Andres Munoz.
Yeah, I mean, And this is a 2-pitch guy, right? This is slider 60% of the time, fastball 40% of the time. And it doesn't matter because the slider is that good. His slider's got to be up there as one of the best, right? I mean, in terms of run value, in terms of just unhittable, just unhittable characteristics. The other side of it that's really remarkable to me is when you have a pitch that's that nasty, how confident and consistent he is with it. Landed it for a strike 71% of the time. That's just absolutely spectacular. You just don't see that. So to have the nastiness, but also the feel for it, that's something you can't really teach. That's just a dangerous blend.
Of pitchers that threw a curveball, going back to Presley, of pitchers that threw a curveball 50 or more times last year, Presley was number 2.
Yeah.
Dustin May was the only other one with a 3,300 RPM curveball.
There you go. I would have put a lot on that.
Dustin May's a gift from God.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Munoz is, if you could inject testosterone into a pitcher, I think he's the only one that could hit 110.
Yeah, I forgot to mention he also averages 100 miles per hour with his fastball.
Yeah.
By the way.
But the slider slept on.
I think it's one of the best sliders in Major League Baseball, point blank. Like to land that pitch for a strike 71% of the time is insane because it is absolutely disgusting. Opponents had an OPS of 340 against it.
Dude.
That's a joke.
So
that's a joke.
The other number that jumps out to me, like obviously we can talk about the 51% whiff rate, the 126 batting average against. Opponent exit velo against that slider, 82 miles an hour. Do you know how many massive rollovers have to go into that equation to pump out an 82 mile an hour average exit velo?
That's actually insane. You and I could put up an 82 mile per hour average exit
off a tee.
Yes, like legitimately off a tee. That's wild. The last thing I'll say on Munoz is here's the slash line: 126, 169, 173.
Dude.
So like if the hitters against Munoz's slider are again like basically you or me. Like that's just insane. Like that's actually one of the worst slash lines I've seen against a pitch that is thrown a lot, right? Like that's the other thing. He uses it a shitload.
65% of the time. Do you think you could hit 126 if you were given like 600 plate appearances?
Hell no. Anyone who says that's lying. No way.
I agree.
No way. 600 plate appearances, I think I'll run into a base hit here or there. Like some really shitty pitchers have done that.
How many hits do you get in 600 plate appearances?
That's a tough one. That one I
say 5.
I'd say like 5. Like I would, you cheat for a fastball, guys thinking, oh, this will be easy. I'm gonna blow 95 by him. You cheat and get the barrel out there. You'll sneak a couple, but yeah, a few.
5.
And anyone that says more than that. Yeah, like anyone who says more than that, like fuck you. No, you won't.
I'm with you. 5 is Hader. Josh Hader had a bad year. He had an ERA over 5, but guess what? He's still like maybe on a Hall of Fame path. He's on the Craig Kimbrell trajectory. 56 appearances. He still struck out 81 in 50 innings. He couldn't command for the life of him at points, and there were some blow up outings. But when you sit 97 with as much run as he gets, and you strike out 37% of hitters, and you have the legacy that Josh Hader has, he's going to be top 5.
Was the playoffs enough for you to say, hey, he's back?
No, because he was able to rest for a lot longer than he can in the regular season.
What is the deal with that? Like this guy's throwing 1 inning, and when he doesn't have a full day to just like rest his body, he can't pitch.
Apparently,
like, I was not buying that for 1 second until like you just couldn't deny it anymore.
You like, couldn't deny. That's the thing. I was like, that's the stupidest shit I've ever heard. And then all of a sudden, they show you the numbers. It's like, oh my God, this guy needs his TV time like Trump.
and dude, you look at even the velocity. Like I was looking game log. Like even going back to the postseason here, the days that he did throw the next day, he legitimately was like 2 ticks down.
It's insane. It's
like 99 to 97. That is the alarming part, and that is the interesting part. But now that we know this, now that the Padres know this, they're going to maneuver around that. I don't think that they really knew that was a thing when he was with the Brewers, but I also think that was part of the reason why the Brewers wanted to move off of him is like, this guy's really finicky here. That's my question is like, does that make him not a top 5 reliever? Because like he's not, your availability is important here.
Yes,
but he's Josh Hader. And in his final 2 outings in the postseason was struck out the side like back-to-back times. And just looked great. And I will say that he did pitch on the second day and struck out the side there. I think if he learns how to pitch at 97, which he can do, I think he was throwing 97, trying to overthrow and compensate. And then we saw the command go wayward. Yeah. He's still a top 5 reliever. And for me, the postseason was enough, though, to say this guy still has it. I do think he needs to answer the question that you brought up in the rebuttal there, though.
Yes. Well, and this is the narrative play here, right? What was my question there in the rebuttal?
No, just kind of like, can he throw every day? Maybe he didn't even pose it as a question, but it's like, it is the question. Can he throw back to back? Like
right.
That is the one answer we didn't get from the postseason. What we did get from the postseason, I think, was this guy's not cooked. He can still pitch with the best of them when he's right. But the question that you kind of bring up here is this guy really not going to be able to throw back to back? Like, right. Is he really not going to be able to do that? I'm not going to ask him to do it every week, but like, you got to do it every other week as a major league closer or a high leverage reliever.
And you're asking him to be a bullpen ace. Like, bullpen aces have to do that. They have to be available when their number is called.
28.
Again, yes, he's 28 years old. He can't be going through the aging process right now where he needs more time. Yeah, man. I mean, Hader, I think when everything was sunshine and rainbows in Milwaukee, it was, okay, Hader's closing today, Devin's going to close tomorrow. And like, that's a really great thing to have. But when you have to go Devin 8, Hader 9, and then the next day Devin goes 1, 2, 3 in the 8th, you say, okay, Hader, 9th is yours. And he starts panicking. That's worrisome. So I'm worried I'm worried about his ability to be a bullpen ace moving forward. But yes, we saw the flashes that Josh Hader is still in there, coupled with the narrative that we let take over this list. I'm sure when we were ranking Hader, we were like, okay, you know what? Yes, he's still top 5.
Yeah, I was going to say, because like I'd consider some of these other guys that we just mentioned over Hader for next year, but maybe that's silly. That's silly.
Here's a take. I'd consider some of the guys right below DeGrom on our starting pitcher list ahead of DeGrom, because what has he proven in terms of availability?
Yeah.
Nothing since 2020.
This was like the old head play here, where it was just like, he's just been too good for too long. We got to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yes. Total old head play. So I probably had something to do with that, and I'm just forgetting now.
This is yes.
Ryan Helsley is 4 with the Cardinals, and I'm taking Helsley over Hader next year with the snap of a finger. Friend of the pod, Ryan Helsley, set 99.7 by 0.3 ticks. He missed off of the Munoz and Duran club with sitting 100, but he pretty much sat 100 if you are a rounder. 94 punch outs in 64 innings. That's a 39% K rate. Opponents hit under 130 against him. He's diesel.
That's it. Like, he literally is diesel. That was a great interview. For those who are just checking us out now, go check out that interview with Helsley from this offseason, not too many episodes back. This guy figured something out, man. He's just going to go right at you and overpower you with the fastball slider. And also mixes in a curve, right? So I'm excited to see how he tries to replicate last year, because obviously last year was special. I want to see how he replicates that, but I think he will.
Who you want in the 9th, Gallegos or Helsley?
Helsley. And I know he didn't have, was it the postseason that wasn't as great for him? I think so. But I'm not worried about it.
No, I saw Gallegos was closing games for Mexico right now.
Yeah, I just think Helsley, I don't know. I have a little bit more faith in Helsley's command overall.
I think I have more faith in 103 too.
Yeah, I do. That's easy to have faith in.
Yeah, and if you are super jazzed up in the 9th inning and you know that you're getting 103 from Helsley, I feel great about that. Maybe I think the second best 2-pitch combo in any bullpen in baseball is Devin Williams, and he's only behind Edwin Diaz, who we will still get to. Sneak peek, go take a look at where Edwin Diaz is. We're going to talk about him in a minute. But Devin Williams is number 3 with the Milwaukee Brewers. Devin, the changeup is obviously what is the viral pitch. It's what everybody loves. But the way the fastball works off the changeup is maybe one of the more underrated things in any bullpen in baseball. Changeup is great, right? 50% whiff rate. Opponents slug 242 against it. But the fastball off of that, opponents were 7 for 78 against the fastball with 44 punch outs and a 128 slug against it. The fastball is good shape-wise, but it's 94 on average. He sat 94 with his fastball and opponents slug 128. How do you do that? Well, you do that by having an elite changeup and working off of that pitch.
That changeup made the fastball so much better. And this Devin Williams was a starter, right? And during COVID, I believe, in going into that time, I think he was playing with the changeup, and that's kind of how he found it to get it to where it is now. If you go back to like way back in his early minor league career as a starter, his fastball kind of got crushed at points. And then, I think finding that changeup, also seeing his fastball tick up in velocity, and he's an 11 mile per hour separation guy, sometimes 12, 13, because the changeup is basically like 3 pitches. It can be almost a straight change. It can be a circle change, and then it can be a goddamn screwball. And that's what's so amazing about him is he can manipulate that changeup into 3 different pitches. So even if you're sitting change, you might not be sitting the right change. You might be sitting the 70, you might be sitting the 82 mile per hour traditional changeup that he'll throw, which is not even traditional. And he instead throws you the 78 mile an hour screwball. That's what makes him so damn good. And then the fastball looks like it's 99 off of that. His changeup, I would venture to say, is probably my favorite pitch to watch of all relievers, I think, right now, just because of the finesse that comes with it too, and the creativity based on how much pressure he puts on that pointer finger. That determines basically what version of the changeup you're going to get. That's just a really cool thing to me. And I always like to see how much he likes to manipulate it and how he can just make the hitter's brain a pretzel.
Yeah, it's that and Kevin Kopps's cutter, I think. No, I mean, it's that and Clase's cutter. I think that are my 2 favorites. And Clase, it's just a bowling ball. But Devin's changeup is certainly there. Number 2 is Clase, the closer for the Cleveland Guardians. He had a 1.36 ERA and a sub-2 FIP, 72 and 2/3 innings. He doesn't strike out as many guys as you would think, 77 punch outs and 72 and 2/3, but doesn't walk anybody, 10 walks in 72 innings. He sat 99.5 with his cutter. We've seen it run up to 102. The thing about his cutter, it's insane. It sits 100. Opponents slug 245 against it. I want to talk about the average launch angle against his cutter.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to get into.
-3 degree average launch angle against his cutter. Yeah. Much like Framber Valdez's best offerings, you are not hitting it in the air.
So I'm glad you brought this up, because you mentioned doesn't strike out guys as much as he should, or as much as you'd expect. I don't say should. He shouldn't do anything. He should do what he is doing. The thing with him is it's a gyro cutter. So for those listening, you probably think, cutter is something that cuts horizontally. Not always. These types of cutters, a gyro cutter, cuts downwards. So it's basically has a lot of similarities with like a sinker, but it looks different. It's thrown different. And it breaks later, I think, depending on the sinker, but generally speaking, breaks later. That is what makes Clase so good, is because not only is it just hard to hit, period, and he still does get the strikeouts, even if you're on it, you're missing over it. The negative launch angle, like you mentioned, it is remarkable. And the way he commands it. So what was it? 63% ground ball rate last year.
Yes.
So on top of that, you're getting all of these ground balls. You combine the high whiffs still, like it's still above average, but 29% strikeout rate, still above average. It's really amazing to see what this guy's figured out. And the command is fantastic.
Yes.
Like he could probably be a starter. It's just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You got one of the best closers of the game, the number 2 reliever in the game. But this guy came up as a starter and probably could be a starter. Like, I really do believe that. I think the arsenal doesn't work as well, like second time through the lineup, but still, this guy could probably find ways to get out. It's like Graham Ashcraft. That's why I think ultimately they may try him in the bullpen, because if he doesn't really succeed as a starter, he also is a gyro cutter guy with the Reds. He could do something similar to this, I think, in the bullpen if the command can get there. That's what makes Class A, I think, number 2, though. We talked about a bunch of guys with freak stuff. I don't think Class A has better stuff than really any of those guys. It's the command. And I think he's got the best command of any of the guys we talked about on this whole list.
So before we get to Diaz, Class A, I don't think Hader is going to be a Hall of Famer. I don't think what Kimbrel has done over the last couple of years makes him a Hall of Famer. I don't think Diaz is on a Hall of Fame trajectory. I think that the next Hall of Fame reliever is this 24-year-old Emmanuel Clase, because I don't think that there's going to be a year where you pencil him in like, oh, he's a lock to have an ERA at 3. I think he's year after year going to be ERA under 2 for 2 reasons. Number one, he doesn't walk anybody. Walks blow up innings immediately.
Yep.
Number 2, the big ball's never a problem for him because of the ground ball rate. So what do you have if you're not hitting home runs and you're not walking anybody? You're not getting walked against a closer and you're not hitting the ball out of the ballpark. You have a couple of ground balls, you have a strikeout, and it's good night. Class A is the closest thing to good night that we have in baseball, I think, because Diaz, while he was amazing last year, he's had home run problems in his career. Class A is never going to have those home run problems.
100%. And it's just, I feel like there's never going to be a night where he doesn't have his pitches because he commands the shit out of them. Yes. Lands both of them. He threw pitches for a strike 75% of the time last year. Remarkable. And on top of that, the way that the gyro works off of the slider, because it has that late bite and the slider has that late bite. So you don't know if it's breaking downwards or breaking horizontally, and they're both hard. The slider is at 92 miles an hour, right? Like It's a hard slider. 50% chase rate on his slider, despite throwing it in the strike zone or around the strike zone very often. Like, that's disgusting. He's going to be good for a long time. I agree. If I could bet on one guy to be a Hall of Fame reliever, it would be Class A.
Yeah. Number 1 is Edwin Diaz with the Mets. He just put up the best reliever season that we've had probably since Mariano Rivera. Craig Kimbrel may like a word, but 62 innings, 118 strikeouts, 18 walks, a 1.31 ERA, a 0.90 FIP, K rate at 50.2%. Nobody can do this. He somehow did this. And the fact that he did this for the Mets in New York, the first year that the Mets are great again, is I thought that was the momentum boost that he needed to continue this season that he had. 17 Ks per 9. Holy fuck.
That's insane. 50% K rate. Every other batter that he faced struck out. Think about that. You're up, I'm on deck. One of us is guaranteed to strike out, essentially. Like, statistically speaking. Obviously, that's not how baseball works, but like, that is ridiculous. And if he somehow walks both of us, he's striking the next 2 out. Right. Like, that is what made him crazy. The one thing that's always held Diaz back is the command, right? Like, that was it. And he's gotten that good enough, especially with the slider, to where he can be so dominant. And the stuff is just so silly. 32% swinging strike rate on his slider, which he threw nearly 60% of the time. I don't know if I've ever seen a swinging strike rate that high on a pitch. Ever. It's insane.
Dude, so his thing, Devin Williams was the second best strikeout artist in baseball at 40%. He's 10% better than everybody else in the strikeout department. 10%, 40% to 50% is like as crazy a jump as you will find if you go back 20 years on Fangraphs, on Baseball Reference. You will not find a larger discrepancy there.
An OPS against his slider, opponents had an OPS below 300. You might as well just pack it in.
He was good night last year.
100%. I mean, going to the games, because we probably went to more Mets games than anywhere else, just being in New York. It really was like when Timmy Trumpets went on, it was over. And I think that's why Timmy Trumpets got so big. Like, yes, it sounded great and it was super cool. Like, it was fun, but it was, if they were doing that for a guy that you, even if it was a good reliever, that you didn't for sure know that the game was over, people aren't dancing around and having the time of their life. Everyone's dancing around because the game's already over. Like, that might as well be the victory song. Like, and that's what it was. You know, and that's what was so amazing. So I'm interested to see if he can duplicate it. I think he will. because his only challenge is going to be himself with command. No one's hitting that shit. I think it's very clear no one's hitting that shit.
And I bet, and I've never talked to Edwin Diaz about this. I've never asked anybody that has talked to Edwin Diaz about this, but I bet that he fought confidence issues previously in his career because he was so good one year in Seattle, and then he was so bad the next year. Like, it's been a constant pendulum swing. That's the kind of year that you don't suck after.
And attached to an infamous trade too, there's just so much going on there. And it was a weird trade. And he was literally the man in Seattle. I think people forget, like, that guy's reliever. If this wasn't the best reliever season we've seen in a while, that might have been the best reliever season we've seen in a long time.
This is second tour for him as best reliever in baseball.
Yes, that's the thing. He's not a one-hit wonder. And I think that's an important reminder. Like, what he did in Seattle was something we hadn't really seen in a while either.
Yep. All right. Number 15, Evan Phillips with the Dodgers. Number 14, Camilo Doval with the Giants. Brian Abreu with the Astros was 13. Yohan Duran with the Twins, 12. AJ Minter, left-hander with the Braves, is 11. Felix Bautista, the Orioles, 10. Number 9, Raisel Iglesias with the Braves. Number 8, Liam Hendricks with the White Sox. Number 7, Ryan Presley with the Astros. Number 6, Andres Munoz with the Mariners. Number 5, Josh Hader with the Padres. Number 4, Ryan Helsley with the Cardinals. Number 3, Devin Williams with the Brewers. Number 2, Emmanuel Clase with the Guardians. And number 1, Edwin Diaz with the New York Mets. So that's our list. Every link you need in the episode description. Again, we're linking Just College Hoops in the episode description. Go get help filling out your bracket. For the love of God, these guys are really good at this.
Yes.
Anything else?
That's all from me. Looking forward to the World Baseball Classic coverage and a lot of stuff on the call-up, as well as we kind of get you primed for the season and let you know a little bit about who's got a shot to maybe make it out of camp. We're getting very close to top 100 time as well. I've been spending a lot of time doing that.
Amen, brother. All right, Peter and I, top 10 bullpens tomorrow.